Today I want to talk about President Donald Trump's decision to let Turkey basically invade Syria. I usually don't talk about politics, but every now and then I'll get into the subject. But this, because it concerns Israel, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to go straight to Jerusalem Post, article by Seth Fransman. They fought alongside the U.S. for 5 years to be bombed by U.S. NATO ally. This title right here is what got my attention. It caused me to think. How would the Gog-Magog war drag Europe into that war? And if it dragged Europe, because it's going to. I mean, you can look in Ezekiel 38. I think I'll go there in just a minute, and you can go to the book of Revelation, and you can find it to be so. How would they be dragged into it? Let's read this, and I'm going to give you an opinion. Never before in history has the U.S. worked with a group and then opened the skies to have another U.S. ally bomb and destroy it. Yes, Israel is paying a very close attention to this, and they should. On October the 9th, the Syrian Democratic Forces, a group of mostly Kurdish fighters who fought ISIS for 5 years and helped create a peaceful and stable area in northeastern Syria, were bombed and bombarded by Turkey as U.S. forces withdrew and watched. This is almost Soviet-esque, what has just happened, folks. What the United States has just done. In an unprecedented reversal of Washington policy in Syria, the American armed and trained encouraged the SDF to liberate wide swaths of Syria from ISIS, only to turn around on October the 6th and under the leadership of U.S. President Donald Trump give Turkey the open skies and borders to attack U.S. partner forces like thieves in the night. U.S. forces withdrew from their positions without explanation, processes, discussions, or leaving behind people to monitor the area, and made it clear to Ankara that nothing would be done to impede an attack. NATO appeared to give tacit approval to Turkey, a member state, to invade northeast Syria, while many European countries expressed concern. Some of these countries, such as the UK and France, had been partners with the US in the coalition against ISIS and had fought alongside the SDF for years. Oh, this thing went and now I got to go find it again. Okay. They too were not informed on October 6th as the U.S. decided to say that ISIS detainees were not Turkey's responsibility and that the U.S. would withdraw from the border. Paris and London appear dismayed that Turkey has invaded, but like the U.S., they don't want to do anything to prevent their SDF partners from being killed in airstrikes. Now I got to remember to go to Debka file because there's something on there about this too. That's very important. Turkey has labeled its operation a fountain of peace, which reminds me, as you know, for the past, I don't know, close to a year now, President Donald Trump has been talking about his peace plan of the century for the Palestinians and the Israelis. The EU came up with their own peace plan. It's still so-called a two-state solution. And then just a few days ago, President Rouhani of Iran is claiming he has a peace plan, and now we have this. And it makes you wonder, is this what Psalm 69 verse 22 is talking about? Is this what 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3 is talking about? When they shall say peace and safety, or shalom is what, because shalom means peace and safety, but when they shall say peace, then sudden destruction shall come upon them like a woman in travail, and they shall not escape. Now, if Daniel 12 says that Daniel's people will escape, then by default, Paul is talking about the Gentiles will not escape. And of course, Paul backs up Daniel 12 in Romans 11, verse 26, if you care to read it. Turkey has labeled its operation a foundation of peace, or a fountain of peace, arguing that it is clearing the border area of terrorists up to a depth of 30 kilometers. We all know that's BS. They all say they're going to do something honorable just before they do things that are dreadful. Turkey then intends to settle several million Arab refugees from other parts of Syria in the Kurdish part of northeast Syria, aka ethnic cleansing. This is what they're doing. Clearing Kurds from their historical lands to make way for up to 140 towns, 200,000 houses, and billions in foreign investments. Think about this. This is what the UN and NATO are going to allow their NATO ally to do. You see where I'm going with this, folks? If they are willing to allow their NATO ally to do this, there's no telling what they are willing to allow their NATO ally to do. In fact, what is the NATO treaty anyway all about? I'm going to finish reading this and I may go to it. Turkey informed the UN General Assembly of its plans in September. Although the military invasion of a foreign country, settling of people, and confiscation of lands from the indigenous inhabitants is usually illegal under international law, a new set of global rules has been created for Turkey's operation. Wow. So what you're saying is, as long as it's a NATO ally, they can do anything they want. Okay, I think I get it. Maybe I'm a little slow, but I think I'm catching on here. The unprecedented nature of Turkey's attack on Wednesday, bombing peaceful towns along the border with impunity, represents not only a setback for 30 years of U.S. policies in the Middle East and around the world, but also a change in the concept of international law and a change in the way Western powers deal with partners that used to fight ISIS. Now we see the depth of the character of NATO. Fact, there is none. And you know that Israel is watching this. If they will do it to the Kurds, they will do it to Israel as well. It came as a shock to the SDF that the U.S. would withdraw so quickly and without explanation, without discussions or process in place. They suffered around 11,000 casualties fighting ISIS, many of them alongside the U.S. in battles such as Raqqa, Baghouz, pressed to complete the total defeat of the ISIS caliphate, only to then be told that now ISIS was defeated, they would be abandoned. Rarely have Western powers and the U.S. invested in a place for years only to have to leave so abruptly. I'm not sure about that, folks. But I will say this. The character of the U.S. and all the NATO allies are now laid bare. For the whole world to see. Now this thing reset itself again. I don't know where I'm at. Oh, here we go. Rarely have Western powers and the U.S. invested in, I was just there. Comparisons were drawn with the fall of Saigon in 1975, but the U.S. had left Vietnam in 1973 and provided the South Vietnamese government with massive supplies upon leaving. So I guess that comparison doesn't count. Iran, Russia, and the Arab League and others have expressed concern about Turkey's invasion, but they don't have a plan in place to do anything. I think I know why. Debka file points something out that nobody else has pointed out, which I find very disturbing. I'll get to that in a minute. The U.S. still controls the airspace in eastern Syria, allowing Turkey to use it to bomb and destroy America's SDF partners. Russia or the Syrian regime have no way of imposing any kind of other order. The U.S. plan now appears to be a method of making way for Turkey to slowly destroy the SDF piece by piece and bomb the cities of eastern Syria into submission one by one until Turkey has taken as much as it wants. Revelation 16, anybody? The U.S. will ask the SDF to continue to keep watch over ISIS detainees and keep ISIS sleeper cells suppressed and keep the Syrian regime and other forces from entering. The goal will be to keep Russia and Iran out while letting Turkey defeat the SDF, eventually withdrawing at the last moment. Washington has not thought this through completely, but scenes from October 9th of fires burning in cities that were quiet and peaceful for years, which were rebuilding themselves from the ISIS terror of 2014, shows the result of U.S. policy failure. Seth Fransman, you are being too kind. Turkey galvanized by popular nationalism and a blend of militarism and religious awakening. Well, that sounds familiar. Didn't that happen in the 1930s? Yeah. It was called Nazi Germany. Has held prayers in mosques across the country to defeat the SDF. Local Arab units recruited from the Free Syrian Army and backed by Turkey have held swords and rifles in their hands and said that they are coming to slaughter the Kafir or the infidels and the atheists, a term used for the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which they say the SDF is linked to. Far-right elements within these Syrian rebel forces will allegedly be used by Turkey to occupy areas taken from the SDF, replacing an American-backed secular multi-ethnic force with a sectarian militia. It appears to be the beginning of the end of the U.S.'s role in Syria, one of which U.S. partners were sacrificed. If they will do it to the Kurds, they will do it to Israel. Let me show you what it says on the Debka file here, and I have it marked in blue down here. I'll start up top here. Netanyahu, Israel ponders preemptive operation to prevent Iranian cruise missile strike. Well, what does that have to do with Turkey? Nothing. So let's go look at what I've highlighted in blue here. The Prime Minister may have derived encouragement for his fighting speech from the events leading up this what fighting speech concerning Iran, leading up to the Turkish operation in northeast Syria on Wednesday, October 9th. Ankara, Washington, and Moscow were in close consultation ahead of this operation. That stinks the high heavens, folks. This is wrong. It is dangerous. It is alarming that the U.S., Washington, and Moscow would be in close consultation concerning that. That means they're in it together regardless. And the fact that Tehran was strictly excluded is not a factor here. Ankara, Washington, and Moscow were in close consultation ahead of this operation. Folks, I didn't even realize it until today. When I saw these two articles, there are things began to become crystal clear to me. I don't believe that NATO is going to kick Turkey out of NATO. In fact, I'm starting to believe now. Now, events could change my mind, folks. I always keep an open mind to facts. But the way things stand right now it wouldn't surprise me if Turkey, Russia, and Iran would go to war against Israel. I am not convinced that NATO wouldn't invoke, what do you call it, the fifth? Let me see if I can find it. The NATO's fifth article. The principle of collective defense is at the very heart of NATO's founding treaty. It remains a unique and enduring principle that binds its members together, committing them to protect each other and setting a spirit of solidarity within an alliance. Collective defense means that attack against one ally is considered an attack against all allies. You're going to see where I'm going with here in just a minute. The principle of collective defense is enshrined in Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time in its history after 9/11 terrorist attacks against the United States. NATO has taken collective defense measures on several occasions. For instance, in response to the situation in Syria in the wake of Russian-Ukrainian crisis. NATO has standing forces on active duty that contributes to the alliance collective defense efforts on a permanent basis. Now, I'm not going to say what if, because it's going to happen. So let's go to Ezekiel 38 and 39. So, Gog, the land of Gog, Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal, and it says, where is it? Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, all of them. Oh, Gomer. Gomer is there too. That essentially includes Turkey as well. Iran, Hindu Kush, maybe even parts of Africa, who knows? Right? Now, if Turkey allies itself with this particular, and it's not an if, they will. They have already. But they're still a NATO ally. How can this be? All right. So we see down here what's going to happen to them, but you'll get a better picture of what's going to happen to this invading army and their lands afterward. All right. Therefore, son of man, prophesy against Gog. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, behold, I'm against you, O Gog, Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will cause you to return and lead you on, and will cause you to come from the north, and will bring you upon the mountains of Israel, and I will smite your bow out of your left hand, and will cause your arrows, figuratively speaking, to fall out of your right hand. You will fall upon the mountains of Israel, and all your bands and the people that are with you. I will give you to the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured, and you will fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, saith Jehovah Elohim. Now this, folks, the next verse is probably what NATO will not accept. When a fire is going to be sent on Magog. Now, I suspect the two witnesses are going to do this, but I'm not 100% certain. Once again, I keep an open mind. What if Israel was forced to launch nukes on Russia, Iran, and Turkey? What do you think that those who dwell carelessly in the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea will do? In other words, the rest of the NATO allies. Will they invoke Article 5 of the NATO alliance? Well, at this point now that we see the true nature of the U.S. government today, since it's been exposed naked for heaven and earth to see, now I'm convinced that they will invoke Article 5 against Israel. We have just witnessed a betrayal against the Kurds. Israel is watching. Israel realizes in the same exact manner that I'm seeing what the NATO alliance will do to Israel if Turkey is up against Israel. We all know, now we know. It should be crystal clear now, folks. This is not hard to understand. Unless you doubt that this could very easily lead to Armageddon, let's go to Revelation 16. Where's Armageddon talked about? Revelation 16. Verse 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up. I talked about this yesterday. The water's been drying up in the Euphrates River since the 1970s. That the way of the king, singular, of Anatolia might be prepared. All right, now look at this. And I saw three unclean spirits. So we have one event, we have a second event, and now we have a third event. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast. The beast is Roman Europe. And out of the mouth of the false prophet. Now, I've talked about, I finally figured out who the false prophet was before. This is basically the head of the Orthodox Church, who was at one time centralized in Jerusalem. That's why it says the beast that comes out of the Eretz, the land. It was them who came up with this false miracle of the heavenly fire that it talks about, that John talks about in this book of Revelation. For they are spirits of devils working wonders, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world, to gather them to battle for that great day of Jehovah Almighty. What causes that? Could it be Article 5? Could it be what the king of Anatolia did in Syria? Could it be? We see clearly in Ezekiel 38 and 39 that Iran and Russia are involved in that war, that thing as well. But you also see in Ezekiel 39 that the nations of the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea will also be set on fire. Now look, to gather them together for that great day of Jehovah Almighty. And he says, I come as a thief, blessed is he that is watching. Watching what? What's happening on the Euphrates River? And keeps his garments lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered together in a place called in the Hebrew tongue Har Megiddo. It's not a mountain of uncertain location. I have showed this particular map time and time again. Har Megiddo is right beside Tel Megiddo. Where there's a mountain, there's a valley. All right? Why is this doing this? Images. Let's go to images and see if I can find a map. So Har Megiddo is the mountain, and Tel Megiddo is the valley. See if I can find it. Here we go. In the Jezreel Valley. All right. Right here. Har Megiddo is right here, and the valley is the Valley of Jezreel. Where is this? Well, you see where the Sea of Galilee is. Northern Israel. They're going to come from the north and come down to invade. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know for a certainty exactly how it's going to happen. I'm just laying out for you how easy it will be for NATO to get suckered into a war against Israel. And when I say NATO, I mean including the United States. Article 5 of the NATO alliance. Folks, Western civilization is in grave danger. You want to talk about, what is it, 3 minutes to midnight? Well, we might be at 1 minute to midnight now with what Turkey is doing. Um, if you're not paying attention, I don't know how to help you. You have to help yourself. You have to do the watching. So please watch. Don't be caught with your pants down.